Screencast 42, a preview of Dynamics AX 2012 report development. Now, I already mentioned that the AX Technical Conference happened back in January, and I want to show you a little bit of what we demoed. So first, I've launched Visual Studio 2010, and there's a new feature we have called the Application Explorer. And if you see the items here, you know what this is. These are all the things that you saw in the AOT. You'll notice we have two nodes, SSRS reports and reports. This is where we put all the SSRS reports, and as you can see, if I expand this node, there are quite a few of them. I think the number right now is about 850. The reports node contains all the X++ reports, and you remember I've been telling you now for 3 years, we're going away from X++ reporting. Let's open up this node and see how many X++ reports we have in the product today. Oh, look at that. We only have 2. And these will go to 0 by the time the product ships. So be aware of that. So I'm going to show you how to build a quick report. First of all, we'll go and... Actually, I want to show you, before I build a new report, I could actually open up the SSRS reports and find a report and right-click, and as soon as the menu comes up, and click Edit. But instead, I'll build a new one by File, New, Project, and it says Report Model, and over here it says Microsoft Dynamics AX, and then I'll give this just a, name really doesn't matter right now, but I'll call it just Demo 1. So this is a model project. There's not going to be a report at first, so I'm going to build a report, and I'm going to go against a table I know has a little bit of data, which is the sys user log table. And I created a query already against that table. And it's just very simple because I don't have much data loaded into the system right now. And we'll add a report to this project by clicking Add Report. And in a moment, you should see the report model come up in the main window. While I'm waiting for that to come in, I'm going to go ahead and go to the development environment for AX 2012. And in my project, you'll see I've created a couple of things. There's a menu item to launch the report we're going to build. There's the query, and I want to open up the query just for a moment. And it's processing. I meant to actually click on the expand icon. Give me just a second. There we go. Now, let me just close this. I just want to open this one actually. And we see there are these methods, of course, nothing there. Data sources just goes against the sys user log table. And you'll notice that there's a range for user ID. Okay? So I just want to show you that. Now we're back to Visual Studio, and we're going to bind that query into the report by adding a data set. Now, unfortunately, you can't just go here and into the queries node. And you'd like to be able to drag in from there and create a data set. But unfortunately, we don't have that. You'll have to create a data set node. And in a second, as soon as this query expands, this query's node expands, I just want to show you the query is there. And let me scroll down a little bit more. And it's this one. And you can see the same things. The data sources are there. And we're going to just pull this in. We're going to create a new data set that uses that data. So just get it. There we go. Add data set. And I'll just let the name stay what it is, data set 1. And then here, data source is still Dynamics AX. I'm going to leave this as query. Notice we actually have 3 options now. There's a new one in AX 2012 called Report Data Provider. I'm going to ignore that. That's for heavy business logic reports. And I'm going to select query here. There's a new query picker, and we're just going to find the same name here, bi demo underscore sys user log. I'm just typing in bi. There we go. And click next. And now it's getting the metadata for that query. And you're going to see some things different from AX 2009. First, we do have all the fields, of course. Notice that we have field groups here. I won't demonstrate that in this report. And a very highly requested feature, getting display methods from the tables. So let's go ahead and just get a couple of fields, user ID and, oh, I don't know, computer name and session ID. And I'll go ahead and get a display method, which probably is not going to display anything interesting, but I just want to show you that it works. I'll click OK. Right, and you'll see all the fields are there that I picked, and notice that we have this AX user context, which you should just really ignore that for right now. And we have this new one called dynamic parameter. It's not obvious what those do, but it'll become obvious very shortly. Let's create a design by dragging in the data set into the designs node. An auto design is created, and if I preview it right now, you'll see we have this new parameters UI, and this is just a sort of a little fake sys query form type thing here. So when you have a range on a query, we'll have this UI. I just click the select button. We'll have some UI come up, and you'll be able to enter some values for, in this case, user ID. And I could put star or whatever. So I'll just cancel out of that. It's just to give a developer a sense of what the end user will see. If I go on the report, it doesn't look very nice, but we of course can fix that. Oops, I've dragged the window out. We can fix that by setting templates, layout template on the design, and I click on the data region. I'll set a style template here, and I'll just go ahead and pick this one, which by the way I made, and it's in the product. And if I preview the report, you'll see nice looking report, right? And you'll notice there are links here. Now these are links to something, an AX form specifically. Notice I didn't have to do anything to get the link. When you link to an AX form like this, the Visual Studio cannot launch the form in the preview mode, but I'll show you the drill through in action in just a few minutes. Notice we have alternating lines. Really looks very nice. We have a good Sego UI font everywhere. You see the hours is there. That's from the table display method. Okay. Now the next thing is, so you've seen that. I want to show you one more thing, which is go back to the report, and this is a little bit of secret AX magic. I'm going to disable some of our magic. And I know it sounds a bit odd, but to disable the magic, I'm going to set this value to true. I want to show you what happens. This is disabling our custom extensions into SSRS. And what would the report look like if we didn't install our custom code? Let's preview it. And this is going to show you some interesting things. Let me close this. And what do you see? First of all, the labels are here. You can see labels bang at sys, so you can use labels, not .NET resource strings. Notice that the formatting of these values is quite different with the magic turned off, right? Also, with the magic turned off, there are no hyperlinks, right? Also, it's maybe a little bit hard to see, but notice that all the columns here are about 1.5 inches. That's the SSRS default. Now, with our magic turned on, go back here and set this to false. Go back to preview. Notice that when the preview actually shows up, you're going to see the labels resolve. Here it comes. The labels get resolved, right? There probably wasn't a label for this field. The drill through is there automatically. Notice the columns have different sizes. Those come from the EDTs now. So we're much smarter in AX 2012 about AX metadata. We can pull it into auto designs without you having to do much. And of course the formatting is correct, right? And again, it's based off the EDT values. So I think it's all excellent. Now one more thing is deployment. There are actually several ways of deploying reports in AX 2012. They're much better and more reliable and much faster than AX 2009. And you have a way of doing it within Visual Studio, and that is just by, you can right click on a project or the solution, either one, and you can click deploy. And watch what happens in this output window. Let me move it up here. You see all this text comes up, and it's just giving some status about where it's deploying, and you can see it's successfully deployed there. There's also deploy succeeded at the bottom left, just like it was in AX 2009. And I won't verify it on the SSRS server. Let's go ahead and go to the client. And by the way, this report is just called report 2. So keep that in mind, because if we go back to the Application Explorer. If you go to reports now, you should SSRS reports. You'll see report 2 somewhere in there. And of course, that's just the AOT. But rather than spending a lot of time there, let's just go to the developer environment for AX. And what I'm going to do is I already created a menu item. Now it's pointing to an existing report I already deployed. But I'm going to point it at, actually, you know what? I'll create a new menu item. It'll be much more obvious. New, and where is it? Menu item, and it's an output menu item. Just waiting for it to get created. There we go, menu item, and I'll go ahead and take a look at, let me save this. And of course, I'll look at the properties on the right. And the object type will be SSRS report, not SQL report library report. That's the old AX2009 stuff. This is SSRS report. This is new. And then object is the report, and it was just called report 2. I'm going to delete this later. Let me scroll down. Didn't give it a fancy name. And it's here. Now, how did it get there? That's quite interesting. And the reason this report is in the AOT is just because I clicked Save in Visual Studio. That's it. So go to Report 2, and then you have to pick the design. Now, there's only one design, so our design 1 was already picked. I'll go ahead and save the menu item. And as soon as the save completes, I'm going to right-click and open it. And you're going to see something quite different from what you remember in AX2009. In AX2009, when you open up menu items like this for an SSRS report, you saw essentially an Internet Explorer window showing SSRS UI. Watch how it's different now with AX2012 and an SSRS report. I click Open. Well, first of all, you get the traditional AX UI, and you can see this user ID came from that range. Of course, if I click here, I can see the infamous sys query form. Let's give it a second. There we go. Sys query form is there. I'll go ahead and cancel out of that because I'm not going to use it. And let's go ahead and just run it. Notice that the batch tab is there. This will actually work. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And it's getting the data. You might see a little bit of a lag the first time you run a report. Just as metadata gets cached, etc. Okay, and you get the parameters on top. This is AX native UI. Notice you get the report rendering here. I can show or hide those parameters. And again, I'm showing you essentially a very early build, so this may look a little bit different by the time you get it. But let's go ahead and click on the word admin here. See what happens. And just waiting for it to process. And again, the first time you run a report, sometimes you will get a little bit of a slowdown, but once the system is warmed up, everything kind of flows quite nicely and smoothly. And there we go. It actually opened up this form for a user automatically. So wow, I think it's kind of an interesting demo. You were able to see me launch an actual form from a report via drill through that I didn't add. It was automatically done for me from the framework. So I think that's a really cool feature. You saw the parameter experience we have for reports, how much more native to the AX feel it is. And also you saw a little bit how smart we are in Visual Studio and our SSRS integration for taking AX metadata and automatically applying it in these auto-designed reports. So I hope you're really curious about AX2012 with this preview. Please feel free to send us email. I think it's daxbifeedback@microsoft.com. And our team is really curious to have your questions and any comments, and we'll help you however we can. Okay, and I'll see you next screencast.